Should have a really nice thing to introduce our illustrious mayor, but we know how busy you are, and we all very much appreciate your time, and we appreciate all of you that are actually making it this late in the evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I go by a lot of names, and if you're in my house, there's a few of them that my kids use. But thanks, and thank you all of you for being here tonight. So, really quickly, I just wanted to, before I've got a few things that I want to talk about, but before I do, I want to thank Home Depot. I understand, generously donated the raised beds and are going to be doing a free clinic on May 5th. And also, they have done some work on the nicotinoids, eliminating those from their plant stocks, which, as we've been moving more and more towards being a bee-friendly city, that's much appreciated. I know our bees appreciate it, and I'm sure all of you know a third of every bite of food that you put in your mouth is there because of a bee, right? So when I talk to people about why bees are important, and I had this conversation like 3 days ago, somebody was like, I don't get it. And I'm like, well, if you want to eat 2/3 less food, which in my case wouldn't be a bad idea, but I want to do it for the right reasons, and that's not one of them. And then also Jerry's Hardware, which I know also they've been generous supporters and have a Harvest Festival August 27th and 28th, which I know they're involved in. So for today's event, I just wanted to thank them for their time. You all have been talking a lot about the what's of what needs to happen, the specific policies and the various actions. But I want to talk a little bit about why. One of the interesting things that frequently comes up is people will say to me, like, why is St. Louis Park, like, why are you involved in X, environmental and sustainability issue? And I always explain to people that I've worked for the federal government. I used to work for Senator Klobuchar. Currently, my day job is at the state. But really, at the local level, we're really uniquely positioned to do these things. And I think it's really for three reasons. One is immediacy, right? In 2014, when the Minnehaha Creek flooded its banks, those were our neighbors that were impacted. And so there's an immediacy to it that policymaker in DC or even someone at the county or certainly somebody at the state level doesn't have that. They don't get that as much as we do. My home is about 50 yards from Minnehaha Creek. So, you know, when we were sandbagging at Methodist Hospital, that was creeping right up on my yard. So we understand the need and the value in it. I think the second one, and Terry and I were just sort of talking about this, is about accessibility. Municipal elected officials are frankly just easier to engage than your state or your federal ones. And I have plenty of examples where I've been out at the grocery store or my kid's soccer game or taking the dog out for a walk and someone will grab me and they'll be like, hey, I want to talk to you about whatever. And so we are here and we have to be available. So there is a immediacy, there is an accessibility, but I also think that brings me sort of to my third example or my third observation, which is we are more nimble. And so frequently I think one of the, I've told people before that there's that old line that states are the laboratories of democracy. And if that's true, then cities are sort of like the petri dishes in those labs, right? We're the ones where the real magic happens, and part of the reason for that is because if you look at the federal government, you have 535 elected officials in Congress between your House and your Senate. You've got a president. And at the state level, we've got hundreds of state representatives. And if you've got an idea that you want to advance at the federal level or at the state level, you have literally dozens, if not hundreds of people that you have to convince you're right. Well, in St. Louis Park, there's 7 people on the council. So I only have to count to 4. So if somebody comes up to me with a great idea, I only have to convince 4 people that this is a good idea. Now, fortunately, most of the votes that we take, especially on good ideas, it's unanimous, right? It's a 7-0 vote. Sometimes it'll be a 6-1 vote. But in reality, I only have to be able to get 4 people, including myself, so 3 other folks, to agree, and we can move that forward. And I think the organics program is a great example of that. You know, when I got into office a little over 4 years ago, revamping solid waste was my big, sexy, exciting, you know, top of the list issue that I wanted to work on, and we did. We expanded what we take in terms of the scope of the recyclables that we take. We moved to single sort, which has boosted up the volume, and certainly there's a higher rate of contamination with that. But the benefits, I think, have outweighed the negatives. And of course, we started the organics program, which I think has been a great success. And in January, I was asked to speak at a conference, this climate sustainability conference, with 3 other cities, Bemidji, Falcon Heights, and St. Paul. And it was the mayors of those 4 cities talking about what they were doing. And I have to tell you, when I mentioned the Curbside Organics program and that we were the first in the state to do something like that, this group of about 200 environmentalists and sustainability experts from around the state burst into applause, right? It was the thing that really spoke to all of them, was that issue about solid waste and how we need to sort of manage that. So moving those sorts of things forward is a lot easier at the local level because, like I said, you only need to get 4 people to vote. So we've worked on a lot of things. I know you all, I'm not going to bore you with a big recitation of a long list, but obviously we talked about solid waste reform. We are just sort of in the process of beginning to tackle greenhouse gas issues. Ryan presented, and the the students from iMatter presented to us a few weeks ago sort of a grade report, and we got a big fat D in greenhouse gases, so we're really actually excited about taking that on. And we did, by the way, just purchase our first all-electric vehicle for the city. So we are moving in that direction. Yep. And I think I can't give you all the details, but I can tell you, and I have it on a very good source. I heard earlier one of the conversations was about infrastructure for electric vehicles and the challenges of being able to charge your vehicle. I have it from a pretty good source that a major automaker is going to be announcing a big move in this direction, like a serious game-changing sort of move in this area. So don't know when it's going to happen, when they're going to announce, but I think some of these issues may start to go away, and we might see electric vehicles be more readily usable. I think one of the other things that not a lot of people talk about is transportation planning. And zoning, and I heard mention of the comprehensive plan. These things really go sort of together. You know, one of the things that we're trying to do is we are trying to be more mindful in planning our city when it comes to zoning rules and what sort of developments that we bring into our city. And I know that for a lot of folks, increased density brings a lot more people and a lot more traffic. But we're trying to build those in ways that minimizes traffic as much as possible. While also incenting the walkability and bikeability of our city through our sidewalk and trail program, the Connect the Park program. So those things, while they don't necessarily sound like they are direct impacts, in many ways they're massive impacts, right? If you change the way a community is organized, you then change the way they move in that community, then you can really have an impact, especially on greenhouse gases. And of course, Southwest Light Rail, which I'm confident will happen, and I've been saying that for 4.5 years, and by God, I will continue to say that. So we'll get that done too, and I think that will be a big help as well. So those are a few of the things that we're working on, and like I said, I only had 10 minutes, and I want to try and be respectful of our time so we can focus on other items. But I will say the one thing. You all frequently, the community frequently has asks of the council, right? Of the mayor and the city council. Do this, do that, this is important, focus on this, spend time or money or staff resources on these things. I have an ask of all of you, and that is one of the biggest challenges, I think, that any movement, and I've dealt with a lot of advocacy groups, I've been in advocacy groups, I've been lobbied by advocacy groups. There is a core group of people who carry most of the water in those projects. Terry's doing it, Ryan's doing it, right? Julie's doing it. Many of you, I heard many of you out there in the audience earlier talking. The number one thing you have to do is you have to make the pie higher. You've got to get more people, not just signed up and engaged in the things that you're doing, but actually driving the things that you're doing. We've got to get more leadership from more diverse communities involved in this, because it's not, movements are not sustainable with a small focused group of people. They can be the sort of thing that is the momentum and they get the ball rolling. But for things to really be successful, we need to have young people more involved. And when I say more involved, I don't mean here at the meetings and speaking to these issues and cheering us on, but actually making policy decisions. One of the things that we really do a lot of, or try to do a lot of, is have youth members on our commissions. I'd like to see actually have a youth advisory commission, just like we have a sustainability commission, just like we have planning and zoning commissions, just like we have police advisory commissions. I'd like to see a group of kids telling us what's important to them, because the reality is, and I'll close with this, the stuff you're doing now, the stuff this group is engaged in right now, let's be really honest. Many of you will not be alive to see it successful. And we talk about that on the council. When we build buildings, when we make decisions, we make them for people who are not even born yet. And you don't really know if you're doing the right thing. You hope that you are. You hope that in 50 years somebody says, you know what, thank God, such and such, whoever thought of this idea, whoever made sure we had transit and transportation, and whoever built these 3 pedestrian bridges, I'm glad that they did. That doesn't always happen. And I'm sure in 50 years somebody will be like, who was the dope that made this decision? Who was she or who was he? But I think we're more likely to get it right more frequently if we have young voices telling us what they want in our community, because we just frankly don't have enough of that. We hear at the council from a lot of people, but they also tend to be the same groups of people. So I would say that for you all, that's your responsibility to us, is to make sure that we're getting a bigger, broader cross-section of voices. So I don't think that, Terry and I were talking about this before, and I sort of thought to myself, some of these issues are really, really big, and it would be very, very easy to say, we've done our best, and we're just going to have to be okay with that. But the reality is, we don't really have an option. I will say one of my all-time favorite lines on sustainability, and you all get this, so you're in on the joke. But I remember years ago, George Carlin, stand-up comedian, giving his thing, and he was talking about, somehow he got on environmentalists, and he said, let's face it, we're not saving the planet. The planet will be here long after we're gone. We're just saving ourselves on it, right? So this is really not about the planet. It's about our existence on the planet and our ability to do so in a sustainable way. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for all your time and all the things that you've done tonight. I sat in on some of the session here, and I heard some great ideas. I also heard some ideas that scared the bejeebers out of me about how we're going to do them, but that's what good ideas are. So with that, I want to introduce a few people who are going to get up and talk a little bit. The first one's Emily Barker, who is Solid Waste Coordinator for the city. So Emily, you want to come on up here? And
I know, that's just fine. Well, thanks. I won't tell Kayla you gave her title away. I'm actually Solid Waste Program Specialist. That's okay. My colleague Kayla, many of you maybe know. I'm actually brand new to the city.
Kayla's not here, so guess what?
That's right, I know. So today I pretend to be the coordinator. So I started with the city 2 weeks ago, but I've been a 10-year resident. Actually, this June will be 10 years of living here in St. Louis Park. So proud resident. And part of the reason my position is a new position, it was partly created to help with the new packaging ordinance that'll be going into effect January 1st around restaurants and others that serve food, serving things in items that can be composted or recycled if they're not using reusable things, but also to address multifamily and commercial recycling in general. So if you live in an apartment, you know that the system, or often that's in place, is somewhat dismal. And so part of my job, a big chunk of my job, will be addressing that. So that's not technically what I'm here to talk about tonight, but I wanted to just put that out there because if you do live, or if you own a business and you have questions about how the ordinance will impact you or how you can do better and more with recycling in your business, I would love for you to take my business card home tonight so we can connect about that. I'm here officially to talk about the organics program. As we had some discussion earlier, we're talking about, there is a cost for it, and a lot of people say, why on earth do I have to pay $10 a quarter for this? And the main reason is actually those bags that we provide. They're pretty expensive, and the amount of bags that you get is at least, I would say, a $30 to $40 value if you were to buy them yourself. So when you think about right there, like that covers the bags. And so, and not to mention the fact that there's trucks that have to drive and all these other things. But the other huge piece is that if you're doing it, I'm not going to say right, but if you're doing it in a way that actually takes your food waste out of your garbage, you need a smaller trash can, right? And so the great thing is the city has priced the trash, and there are it's really exciting because for 2016, the 2 smaller bins, the price is actually going slightly down this year, and the 90 bin is going up. And so they're really making it more really as a pay-as-you-go or pay-as-you-throw system, where you pay proportionally to what you're actually throwing away. So the great things about that is that you will actually save money if you add organics and then drop your trash cart. For those of you in the 20-gallon size, I get it. You can't go any smaller, so I'm sorry about that, but that's just kind of where we are. I do have, if anyone's interested in signing up, please do let me know. I've got some handouts. Also, if you happen to miss, everyone should have gotten one of these in the mail, but this is the Recycling Organics Garbage Guide, and it's got all the great tips for what you can put in each bin. You can take one of these. One thing I do want to point out, and this is actually really important that this group for gardening focus know about this, we are it's no longer going to be allowed to put coffee cups, the plastic-lined coffee and cold cups from your typical Starbucks and like McDonald's and stuff. They're lined with plastic. And the compost facilities, when it was just like St. Louis Park and a few other handful of things, they could deal with that in their like cleaning process at the end. But now as Minneapolis has come on board with theirs, they're finding that they have a lot of plastic in their finished product and trying to get that out. And when you think about that from using compost for gardening, so please don't put your Starbucks or your McDonald's cups or any of that in there. Now, that said, once the ordinance goes into effect January 1st, theoretically, all of those places should have compostable cups. So even better, bring your own. But at least for the next 8 so months, please don't put any of those in your curbside organics. Okay, so that's mostly the organic stuff. If you are currently a customer, watch your mail soon for the organics, the compost distribution. One thing I do want to say, we apparently get a lot of complaints, people not realizing, they say that compost that's right by the entrance of the mulch, it's full of rocks. Don't get that stuff. The stuff that's actually good from the compost facility, you have to go back into the site. It's kind of long. I'll just talk really loud. So just watch your mail in the next week or so for those. Last thing, solid waste related, there will be some brand new beautiful recycling carts in the parks this year, starting next weekend hopefully. The Hennepin County gave the city a grant to put in a bunch of recycling carts. They'll look just like ours, and but basically right now there's about 1 recycling cart for every 4 garbage cans, and now there'll be 3 for every 4. So it's not exactly 1-to-1, but it's a lot more, and so it'll be really great. No, sorry, I should not have pointed that. The carts like that, but the blue lidded ones, so it'll be that. Okay, now my second little thing, I'm wearing a different hat. My colleague Jim Vaughn is not able to be here this evening, but he asked me to quick talk about community gardens. The city has 3 that we manage, and I'm assuming several of you are familiar with them, but Herd Community Gardens, Nelson Park, and Texatonka. And the exciting thing this year is that the Nelson Park location over there on Georgia at the bike trail has many new plots. The city just dug up or whatever and brought in compost and soil, and these yellow things represent open spots. So if you're someone who's waited and looked for a spot, you can contact Gene Zimmerman, at the Municipal Center, and if you want that information, come find me afterwards. So
what happened to Birchwood Garden? Is it?
Oh, there we go. I'm not sure. I'm playing someone else right now, so you'd have to ask Jim. I don't know about that one. Yeah. So again, please come get my card if you have anything that's relevant. And
Did you mean at the compost it, you mean have Cedar Lake Road on the tracks?
Yeah.
You mean you have to go through the gate?
Yes.
To get the good stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's the stuff that's coming from the facility, so it's nice and screened. The stuff at the front, I think, might come from a yard waste site, and it does have a lot of gravel in it. But the stuff that's further back it's a tested compost. So the compost facility our stuff goes to is down in Rosemont. They send their stuff to have it tested for all sorts of toxins and all the other things like having to do with pathogens. But it's a very nice product. So just make sure to get that, because if you don't know and you're like, what is going on?
Isn't
Yeah.
that gate locked sometimes? Though?
That's why, yeah, so you do need to go when they're open to get that, and they do that first for organics customers, and then later in the summer it's open to all residents, so. Great.
I could definitely, I'm not gonna ask for a show of hands, like, I'm not gonna, like, out anybody or shame anybody, but I'm not a backyard composter. But my wife and I signed up the minute the Curbside program was available to us, and it's been tremendous, right? And I think that's one of the things, sort of going back to this issue of making the pie higher, like, I'm not like a master gardener, right? I don't get that, and I'm not that guy, and that's okay. That's actually who we want to be talking to, right? I always sort of used to joke when I worked for Senator Klobuchar, we talked a lot about renewable energy incentives, and people were talking about, like, we've got to make cars smaller, and we've got to get these hybrids that are, you know, we got to get people buying Priuses. And I always used to tell the senator, you know, the reality is, what we need is we need the hybrid Tahoe, because there will be people who need them, and they are gas guzzlers. It's got to be across the board, right? So it can't be just talking to the same universe of people. And I know, like, recently Ford came out with an aluminum body vehicle, which has now made it like the EPA leader in trucks, and all of these sorts of things we need to be doing. But on this issue of composting and recycling, we really have to start talking to businesses, and we have to start telling businesses, you know, I'm not going to shop here. Right? You don't do recycling. I'm not going to shop here, right? And I've run into situations where I've walked into coffee shops and I've asked them, like, do you recycle? And one of the people behind the counter is like, yeah. And she reached for my glass, and then another woman walked up and she said, in reality, no, we don't. We'll tell you that because it's what we should do. And I'm like, thank you for telling me. I appreciate that. I'll take this home and I will recycle it. But that's why I'm really looking forward. You know, it's part of the reason why we were like, we just have to take the step and require multifamily and businesses to be doing it. And the last thing I'll say on the organics thing, you know, Emily knows these numbers better than I do, but last year Hennepin County had done this big analysis, and they tweeted out that Hennepin County's organic material collection had gone up 42% in 1 year because of one thing, and that was our ordinance, our Curbside Organics program. Made that shoot up 42%, right? In St. Louis Park, just us, nobody else, because no one else was doing it. And the important thing to know is that was when our organics participation rate was at like 12%. Imagine what that number could be, you know, when you look at 50 to 60% of everything you conceivably could throw away is either organic matter or recyclable. You sort of see the solid waste impact on it. So anyhow, sorry, I'm done. But I'm really passionate about the composting program because I think it's a huge win for us. So Lisa Green, Community Ed, is going to come up.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being at Lennox Community Center, which is one of our buildings here in the school district and is managed by the Community Education Department. And I know Julie wanted me to talk about the gardens, but first I have to say that this was the first time we have used the kitchen. We, a while back, and we had a bond referendum to bring that kitchen back there up to code. We couldn't use it before, and so we brought it up to code, but then it was really like, we didn't really know what that meant then as far as how we were actually going to be able to use the kitchen. And so we went through a little bit of dicey times as we were trying to figure out how we're going to manage this tonight. And the Hennepin County Food Inspections did say then the Seeds group could use it to actually cook food. And they did. And I am thrilled with the amount of food that came out of that kitchen tonight. I just I can't be happier about that. So that's awesome. And so hopefully we will be able to continue to use the kitchen in that way. And then Julie wanted me to talk about the gardens at Central and Lenox, and I know she's going to talk a little bit more about it, but I just want to say that a couple years ago, Julie approached the school district about having schoolyard gardens, and we were kind of like, well, how does that work, and how would that look in the summer, and who takes care of them in the summer, and that kind of thing. Well, then we realized we have a program that's here all summer long, and that is our Kids Place Child Care program. And so she planted the gardens, and everybody was like, at first, when all these hay bales and straw bales were being dropped off, and people are like, what's going to be happening with this? And we weren't really sure. And halfway through that summer in July, and all of these plants are growing, and it was just beautiful. And then we were sold. And the parents just love it. The kids are eating different kinds of food now than they might not have because they've grown it themselves. The parents are loving it. They can take food home. So we find that it has been an excellent addition to our Kids Place program, so we are just very happy to have it. So thank you.
And then, Julie, you want to get up and talk a little bit about seeds? Cool.
So I'm going to let Sean talk about the visioning thing, but I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been a long day, and I've been waiting for this to happen for several months, actually, since last year. And one of the things that we would like you to know about is that the goals we announced last year, we have actually accomplished over 90% of them, both short and long-term goals. So the point of actually standing up and saying goals to your fellow citizens and officials and the TV land actually makes it that much more powerful and that much more achievable. And so I'm excited to hear what kind of goals are coming out of tonight. And I want to, again, thank all of you for being here. We have a new board. Seeds has become a nonprofit, and I cannot believe what my board members have been doing in the kitchen and really accomplished a delicious meal, I thought. So woo-hoo to you guys. Oh, and then for Lisa Campbell wanted me to bring up that they are doing this pilot program over at Susan Lindgren, and she is looking into discussions about bringing after-school green team clubs, may or may not include the gardens, but one way or the other, getting the children involved. And I've already reached out to the Roots and Shoots High School Club to have them be those older brothers and sisters in the city that would help these kids get very enthusiastic about going out and actually creating change. So thank you again for being here tonight.
Thanks for organizing this, Julie. Do you want to come up and talk about the breakout goals? Yes. All right.
We had a breakout session for the environment and sustainability group, and what I'm going to break it into things I heard from the kids, and things I heard from the adults, and things that I heard from the professionals. So let's start with the kids. What the kids were most interested in is clean water and clean air. They want trees. They want more green things. They want gardens. They want to learn about gardening. They want pollinator gardens. They want green things so animals can live and birds can live healthy and they can live healthy. That's the first thing I heard from them. From the adults, I heard a lot about, they also talked about clean energy. From the adults, I heard about electrifying the city, becoming less relying on fossil fuels, and having electrified mowers, our houses, our cars, our lawnmowers, all these things that put all these dirty greenhouse gases into the air. We want to change that. That's what I heard from the people. And also, we heard about waste. We talked about getting more involved in the organics program and maybe even making it mandatory. I heard that as an option if we can't get enough people to sign up for it volunteer. But we prefer to do things on an incentivized basis, is what I also heard, rather than making things laws, but trying to get people to do it. And then the other thing I heard from the experts are eating less meat. This is a huge issue in terms of greenhouse gases, and that's one of our experts, Terry Gibbs, talks about. It's 18 to 20%, right? And that maybe is something we could have meatless Mondays or promote that in our city. And put all of these ideas into our comprehensive plan that's coming up in 2017. So that's what I heard. Thank you.
All right, so we've got our work cut out for us then. Nothing big. Sounds like real small stuff, mostly. We'll knock these things off in the next 6 weeks. We'll be done. No, I had plenty of. All right, What's that? Oh, okay.
So we had a group upstairs talking about the healthy food access, including it into the comp plan. And so with all the wonderful momentum of the Health in the Park initiative over the last 3 years, a simple step would be to have a subcommittee on health that would interact with the comp plan update that could include both staff and other commission volunteers, both from the Planning Commission as well as from the Environmental Commission, where they could look at some of the bike walk issues as well as food access topics. And one of the thoughts would be to do a survey with the people who use the STEP food shelf to see where there are gaps in terms of food access in the community, and that could help impact the comp plan. In addition, a lot of the other cities around the metro are having not only their staff committee working on the comp plan, but also a commission committee that would include both your environmental commission folks and some of your planning commission people. And then from that point of view, you could also have a point person on energy, a point person on active living, point person on equity, so that these themes that you want to include in the comp plan can be having not only a staff champion, but also a commission champion keeping an eyeball on those topics. And to make it easier, then a lot of the cities are going to be doing this at the same time, and the Alliance for Sustainability is supporting similar groups in Edina, Bloomington, Minnetonka, and Minneapolis. So by having all the cities compare how they're developing their comp plans, it can make it easier to especially tackle these energy topics without using a lot of extra staff time. So thanks.
Great. Yep, come on up.
So another one of our breakout sessions, Terry's kickoff session, one of the things he said was one of the doorways to sustainability is health. And so one of our sessions was about nutrition, and in our schools, and schoolyard gardens certainly is a big part of that, of how do we get kids engaged in the growing process around our food and how that impacts certainly their long-term health. So our group, there were 3 main goals that we sort of came and summarized to. Number 1, school and community gardens. So making space available. The talk seems to be that maybe less of those community gardens, maybe less space is even available than previously was, or we need to continue to make that a priority to not only have schoolyard gardens, where those appear to be continuing to develop, and also community gardens as well. And then the number 2 goal was really then getting that fresh food into our school kitchens. So healthy farm to table food in our school kitchens, fresh, made from scratch food, and even better to have it coming from the gardens where the kids are involved in that also. And then lastly, outdoor learning space for nature play, exploration. We had some conversation around the wonderful resource we have in our community of the Westwood Nature Center, and getting kids having the ability to do that. We know that not only is our health benefited by eating good food, but also by being exposed to nature and having kids have the opportunity to get outside and play in the dirt and help to grow the food. So those are sort of the three big things that our group talked about. And I would just add that we're at a really wonderful opportunity right now to make some of these things happen because of the comp plan that we're talking about with the city, because of the facilities design team that is formed in the school district to talk about the school buildings, the space that we have available, and how do we plan that for the coming years to make sure that we're maximizing the health of our community. So I encourage you, for those watching and those here, to talk to their school principals and school board members and city council, because we're at a great time right now to see these things come to fruition. So thank you for being here.
On those items too, I just want to mention a couple things. The Joe Tatalovich, who's the school board chair, and I, a few months ago, were having coffee, and one of the things I had suggested to him was, as closely aligned as the city and the school district are, conversations around joint facilities and physical infrastructure and the needs that the school district has and the needs that the city have. We often talk to each other, especially at the superintendent, city manager level. It's a lot of conversation there. But for those of us who are policymakers, to sort of be able to really dig in on some shared interests. And the first one that we're going to actually be digging into is this issue of physical infrastructure and buildings and what the school district is going to need and what we have or need, and to try and make sure that we're at least aware of what each other are working on so we can try and leverage each other's resources and combine forces to make things more efficient, less cost effective, and what have you. So that's one of the things that we are working on.
I just want to say thank you to our mayor and to each and every one of you. Terry did a great job, and Ryan has, worked inspiringly with these kids, and Larry Kraft with iMatters. And we do have kids that want to be on commissions, that want to be on boards. And I think the youngest one here tonight, is he still here? Nope, they already went home. He's already on Rob Metz's hand-picked council of students. And he had a lot to say, and I was really impressed with him. Yeah. So we have an exciting future, and we just have to roll up our sleeves and get some work done. But that's okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. And keep August 27th and 8th, Harvest Festival. If you got gardens, you want to have them on tour, or you want to teach a class or something, please let us know. Thanks again. Happy spring.